We're excited to have James today. We've had a few of our teams, our agents, and do presentations. James participates in about everything. He always has great things to share and insights. He's talked a lot about this topic, so it didn't surprise me that you chose this topic to do. How many times you said read the book? Four. So, I mean, that's pretty immersive, right? I mean, sometimes I listen to a book and I heard about a third of it, right? Because I was doing something else, but to actually read and take notes and highlight in a book. So I'm excited for this because now I don't have to read it. I'm just kidding. No, so James, come on up here, unmute your mic. And I'm going to click right into this for you. This is just a slide. This is who we are. Jeff Marchant, everybody here I think knows who I am. My wife Lynn right here. We like doing these presentations. I would call them trainings, but it's really just like we're introducing people to people, right? We're gravitating more towards doing personal development type of presentations than just always real estate, always business, always. You can learn that from mentors and different people all the time. So we don't need to be that for everybody, because if you get this part right, then the business tends to follow. So I'm excited about this day and this topic. And James, I love James.
I
just love James.
Oh,
Yeah, you're
thanks.
up, buddy.
Awesome. We're doing, I guess, okay, I see myself.
Yeah.
All right, so this is going to be fun. It's like, I know a bunch of people on the camera, so this is just like presenting to a bunch of my friends. So I don't feel quite as nervous, except for that Shayna's camera pointing at me. So yeah, today we're going to be talking about the happiness advantage. This is what the book looks like. I can give more details about it afterwards, but it was written by Shawn Achor like in 2010, and it kind of poses the question where it says down here, how a positive brain fuels success in work and life. It kind of poses the question, or at least I pose the question, is, which comes first, the chicken or the egg? We talked about this a little bit, and you think about it long enough, I decided that I don't really care. It's probably because I'm not smart enough to actually figure it out, and that irritates me. And so, but what we're going to show through this, and this is all science-based, is that there's an equation with happiness and success, and those go in a very specific order. But as far as the outline today, there's going to be 3 parts. Part 1 will just be an introduction to it. Part 2 is going to be the majority of it. This is where the meat and potatoes are going to be. We're going to talk about 7 specific principles that can help us take advantage of the happiness advantage. And then the part 3 is going to be talking about the ripple effect. I have to give credit where credit is due. This is Shawn Achor. That's what the book looks like. And that is what like the freshman hall at Harvard looks like, because Shawn grew up in Waco, Texas, and never had imagined that he'd be at Harvard, but that's where he ended up, and he was a proctor there for years and years. That's what they call it. There's several references to that in the book. And so back to the chicken and the egg question. A lot of times, and I think looking back, I've been taught something similar, where the equation is, if we work hard and we get success, then we will be happy. But what that actually leads to, I feel, and kind of what I've seen in my life, is a chasing effect. We're constantly chasing. And so when I completed one project, was I happy? Yeah, there's like momentary, or could be for like a week, or maybe a potential little bit longer of satisfaction of reaching that, but you want to keep pushing and growing. And so there's always something else. And so that resulted in a chasing effect. And you just kind of go in a circle. And at some point you end up at the office looking like this guy. Just kind of head down thinking, I've been successful. I've reached all these goals, but why am I not experiencing, why is this equation not working for me? And so there's truth and lies to that equation. And the truth is teased out in a meta-analysis. And what that is, they took 200 studies. I don't know if people are going to like this. This is kind of what I nerd out over. But so there was 200 individual studies, and they basically compiled these studies, looked at the similarities and differences. And in all these studies, there were 275,000 people, and they were looking at this exact question. What comes first, success or happiness? And what they found is it's completely opposite to the equation that I presented earlier, and that happiness actually leads to success, not the other way around. And so this concept was impactful for me because I was pretty good at running that last cycle as far as setting a goal, accomplishing it, and then I'm like, oh, I'm going to be happy. This is going to be fantastic. Mhm. And maybe that's why I did cross country in high school, because I like chasing stuff. I really don't know.
The people in front of you.
Yeah. And so this is going to be kind of the crux of the presentation today, is if this is the order in which it goes in, and everybody wants to be successful regardless of what our definition is, and we know that happiness leads to that, how can we be happy? And so it also brings up the question is, I kind of like the way that the equation works out, because let's be happy first in success, because that's ultimately the goal in life, regardless of what we do it. And if you think about, well, I have to wait to be happy, that's kind of like you start to feel anxious and depression and just various other emotions that aren't necessarily useful. So, and if we actually wait, it actually limits our brain's potential to succeed. We kind of get horse blinders on and see like this is the only way, and you keep pushing towards that. And so if we start to cultivate positive brains, we actually become more motivated, efficient, resilient, and you're actually more creative. Has anyone experienced that, where they're like maybe at a low spot and it's just, you can't think your way out of it? All of a sudden, like, I'm going to go to the gym, I'm going to listen to my favorite song, and all of a sudden, like, all these ideas are just absolutely flowing. That's this principle in effect. And so the ultimate result is that happiness actually drives performance. And we'll see later that what fuels performance is happiness and optimism. So we'll get to part 2 of this. This is going to be the first principle, which is the happiness advantage, and how happiness actually gives our brain a competitive edge, not only amongst ourselves, but also within organizations. Whether you're like selling solar, knocking on doors, working at a body shop, it doesn't matter what you're actually doing. So if we know that happiness is the first step, we should probably define that. The good news is there's no single meaning, which makes it kind of hard also, but yeah. But it's what I liked about these that were presented in the books, it's really relative to the person. I mean, look at this little kid just staring at themselves, just absolutely happy. And then look at this fellow. He could have one facial expression on himself, so he just kind of has a neutral mouth, but the way he draws himself, he could just have like the biggest smile in the world, just as if like his kid had a birthday or they accomplished something. So it's really, happiness is really subjective, so it's based on how we feel about ourselves. And the only person you see in the mirror is you. There's no comparison in this, so that's an important point. And so Shawn Achor, his definition of it is this last one, is it's the joy we feel striving after our potential. And so some of the benefits of the happiness advantage, they've shown that you experience success in all domains of life, or nearly all domains. So you can kind of see those listed there: marriage, health, friendship, community involvement, creativity, and then also in particular, like jobs, careers, and business. And there's numerous studies in here where he's worked with either like the Harvard students or Fortune 500 companies and applied these principles successfully. So we'll kind of go over quick 3 little studies that talk about this. In study 1 is they took a group of people and measured their initial positive emotions. So these people were in the workplace. And then they came back to them 18 months later. And they found that those people who scored highest initially as far as on a happiness scale, they actually had better performance reviews and eventually got paid more money. And then study 2, the good news is I know my kids are never going to see this, so I put a bunch of pictures. And this looks like something a college freshman. So, yeah, fully supervised. Yeah. So study 2, they took the initial happiness score of some college freshmen, and then followed them for actually 19 years. And they followed on various different categories. And they found that happiness was actually the biggest determiner of what their income was 19 years later. You're like, this is kind of great. But then you look at study 3, where they studied 180 nuns, and I don't know if nuns are happy or not, but you would think they would, because they're fully devoted to one thing, they're studying, and it's just potentially happy in rainbows. But so they followed these 180 nuns that were all born before 1917, and they journaled and everything. So they looked through their journals over the past 5 decades, and they kind of coded it for positive emotions. And what they found is that those people who had the highest category or the most number of positive emotional content, they actually lived 10 years longer than any of the other nuns. So not only does it have an impact on health, but also monetary aspects also. All right. So now we've kind of seen some examples of why happiness is important. Then you're like, okay, well, how do we get happy? And so that's kind of what I'm showing in this picture. Now, it is important to mention that you don't have to do every single one of these. And each of these, if 2 people are, say, doing meditation is not going to look the same for each person. It's really customizable to you. And so that's something to kind of keep in mind. But these are a list of things that have been shown to improve mood and help raise levels of happiness. So there's meditation, find something to look forward to. There's a guy that we met in Kansas, and he just summited Mount Everest. Oh. And so how many of these categories does that process take into account as far as summiting Mount Everest? Well, it's definitely not something you're going to decide to do tomorrow and all of a sudden get there. And then it also takes some serious exercise and probably a little bit of cash to do that too. And so with one simple goal that he set, he found something to look forward to, he exercised, and he spent money, not on stuff, but on an experience that very few people can complete, let alone survive. And then you can infuse positivity into your surroundings. Like you can have pictures of your kids by your computer, or you could have like a vision board that shows which direction you're going. And so exercise can be a number of different things. And then also conscious acts of kindness is also one that is a big driver of happiness. I have exercise as signature strength at the bottom, because for a long time, everyone probably figures they have strengths. They're just somewhat hard to identify. But after I took this free signature strength test and got those back, I was like, holy cow. And I could actually look back in my life when I was happy and I was actually doing one of those things. So I'll share a link to that at the end. So it's pretty impactful. And then once you can identify what they are, you can immediately start generating happiness in your life, and it comes from within. What are you smiling at, Shayna?
I'm just saying Jeff is gonna finally take the test.
Yeah. So then it kind of poses the question, so now that we know how to be happy and the importance of it, is like how much or how often do we kind of need these positive interactions? Again, they've done another study, and they've determined what's called the Losada line, and the exact numbers that 2.0 or 2.9013, that's the ratio of positive to negative interactions that actually kind of counter each other. So we'll just round that up to 3. So basically, I envision that if I get mad at one of my kids and they interpret that one direction, I have to do like 3 nice things. 3, and it's probably not 3 positive words in a row. It's 3 separate things just to fend off the effect of one negative. And this is not only applicable to those sort of relationships, but it's also can be applied to like in the workplace. And they found that the ideal ratio or for maximum production at 6-to-1, anything above that, it's kind of diminishing returns, but 6-to-1 is really the best ratio that you're going for. Who here's been on a teeter-totter? Anybody? Those things are fun. So, and that's, I think, a good picture for principle number 2, which is the fulcrum and the lever. And this is going to talk about changing your performance by changing your mindset. So Much like exercising, it's similar with our brain. Our brain really only has so many resources. You can't sit there and squat for hours on end and never experience some sort of fatigue. And so with this Archimedean formula, it says, give me a lever long enough and a fulcrum on which to place it, and I shall move the world. And so in order to maximize our potential, there's two factors: the lever, which is this straight bar, which is going to eventually move the world or load or whatever you put there, and then our mindset is the fulcrum. And if you ever tried to balance somebody that was a little bit bigger or smaller than you on the teeter-totter, there's some movement that has to go around to do that. But as we improve our mindset, you can kind of think of it from the distance from wherever you're pushing down. As we expand our mindset, increase that's going to move the fulcrum closer to the load. That's going to allow the load to move more easily. And then the power of possibilities, this is essentially the length of the lever arm. As you, like if you've ever tried to change a tire on the side of the road, but they don't give you a lot of lever arms. So sometimes you need to put something on it, and a longer wrench is going to be so much easier. So the lever arm is really the power of possibilities. Combining the more power of possibilities with the increased mindset is going to allow you to move whatever your goals are much more easily. I gotta hurry. I didn't time this, but so we're going to talk a little bit about the Pygmalion effect. This is mostly applicable to groups. And so this is a really cool study. So some researchers went into an elementary school, gave the kids all the same test, and then they told the teachers, like, hey, we've identified like 3 like academic potentially superstars. So this is really cool. And so they told the teachers their names, and they also said, okay, we're going to monitor you for the next year and see if they develop into their potential. And we don't want you to treat them any differently. We don't want you to spend extra time. We don't want you to talk to them any differently. And you're going to be monitored, so everything stays the same. So the results of this, 3 students indeed absolutely tested off the charts and were academic geniuses at the end. The trick, they picked these kids absolutely randomly. These were normal students, and their potential was communicated by the teacher to these people non-verbally. And so, kind of cool.
Yeah.
So that just gives you an idea of power of thoughts. If we have enough time, I'll get to another little experiment on, I mean, that affects other people, but just think of the impact that our words have on ourselves. So principle number 3. Has anyone here played Tetris? Anybody? Played it like on a TI-89 calculator back in the day? You gotta like connect with the wire to your buddy. So this was a fun game. I don't know if they do this anymore, but they actually paid 27 Harvard students to play Tetris for like a long time. And so they were obviously like pretty happy about that. So they tasked these Harvard students to play Tetris for multiple hours a day for 3 days in a row. And then when they came back, these students actually told them they couldn't actually stop dreaming of like these patterns falling and moving little bricks around. I mean, they were walking around. I think one story in the book talked about how they were walking around New York and they're like, oh, if I move that building right there, that would right there. I knocked the bottom out and then that would. And so what's interesting about this, in such a short amount of time, these people were forming new neural pathways because those buildings were still there. They just didn't recognize the pattern of moving one over and shifting and everything. So, and for quite a while, they thought, you know, after adolescence, it's kind of like you can't teach a old dog new tricks sort of thing, but that's completely false. And so what happens is that this is the way our brains kind of work. They easily get stuck in patterns of viewing the world. And some of those viewings can be, some are more positive than others. And so the point is what they expose themselves to kind of help them develop a pattern and develop those new neural pathways where they were seeing these different shapes falling. And so with the Tetris effect, there's really positive and negative effects, and these can be relative. So some of the potentially negative Tetris effects, like tax auditors, they're constantly looking for mistakes. Athletes, they're super competitive. Financial traders are always assessing risk. And it talked about, I don't think these are good managers, but people who are constantly micromanaging people. And the problem is, much as this ink is a super useful tool in communication when it's in the bottle, but when it's not compartmentalized, you have a disaster on your hands and kind of a big mess. So even though these categories were all super important for these people, if they couldn't keep that in their workplace and that started to spill over at home or relationships or anything else, that's when it starts to become a negative Tetris effect. The good news is that the positive Tetris effect, it's a trainable skill, and we can actually train ourselves to scan the world for opportunities, and that'll help our success rate grow. And the result of doing that is the most important tools that we have to us are the happiness, gratitude, and optimism, and we're going to be able to maximize those. So the question is, how do we do that? And it comes down to consistency and repetition being the most important thing. And they recommend identifying good things. And so maybe at the end of the day, your goal is to write down 3 good things that you experienced over the last 24 hours. And in doing this, it teaches your brain to actually scan for positive events. I mean, you could probably easily rattle off 3 bad things because our brains are a little bit more predisposed to look for those things. But if we force ourselves to scan the last 24 hours and look for potential positives, that's a great way to do it. And so like if some things to write down, as long as you're super specific with these, like anytime you've laughed or you've accomplished something for the day, no matter how big or small, or if you feel hope or had a good connection with family or friend, that's the key to do it. All right, so principle number 4, following up. This is from the Fall Guy. Go see it if you want, I don't care. It's okay. But this was an example of like, one we'll talk about a little bit later, like social investment. Our daughter is obsessed, I don't even know this guy's name, with this person. And so we went and saw the movie, and it's just more exciting to see your kids get excited about these things, even though it's lackluster. So kind of like what we talked about earlier, as we're scanning different things, we actually can create mental maps to help navigate through complex and the ever-changing world, much like London. I won't get into that exact story, but and so what happens is the most successful decisions come when we can think clearly and when we have a positive mindset, and then we're able to see all pathways in front of us. And when we do that, we're more likely to, when we're experience a failure, we're more likely to see it as an opportunity for growth. And when we see it as an opportunity for growth, we're more likely to experience the growth that we envision from that. So this is one of my favorite videos. Do I know how to play this? Oh no, apparently I don't.
Should be able to just click on it.
I just click the next button.
No, try that with the mouse. If you're gonna have to click on the TV screen. So then the
Let somebody know what they're doing. That'll work. So that's a different mindset, don't you think? Go ahead.
Can I add that?
Yeah.
So I'm really good at looking for the negative things that happen in my day. But recently I started using these sugar cookies, like decorate them for parties and stuff. And it's been really interesting to watch my mindset kind of shift, because you have the instructions, bake for 10 minutes or whatever, but every oven is a little bit different. And so every batch I bake for is a little bit different, so I can find the exact right amount of time to bake them for. And every time I get it wrong, I'm like, okay, that's good. I know it's not 8 minutes. It's probably 9 minutes. Oh, not 9 minutes. It's probably 10 minutes. And same with the icing and decorating, just the process of doing things. And it's like, oh, this is actually really great. I'm learning a lot of ways to not do the cookies to find the right way.
Yeah.
So,
I think that's a perfect example of following up. And so you identified an additional path. And in the book, it talks about how psychologists will often talk to soldiers when they're about to be deployed, like, hey, you're either going to come back normal or you're going to have PTSD. You're like, well, let's 50-50, let's flip a coin, you know? But there's actually a third path, and it's post-traumatic growth. And this can also happen when there's other significant events that happen in your life, either bone marrow transplant, bereavement, chronic illness, any of those sort of things. They've actually found that a lot of people who experience these experience more happiness during and afterwards. And what takes center stage in that is those people's mindset. So, and kind of like what you talked about, the funny thing is, like, this helplessness can actually be learned. And so in this study, they took 2 separate groups of people and they put them in separate rooms. And they said, you know, I don't know if they told them, they said, we're going to expose you to a loud noise. You got a bunch of buttons on this panel. Go ahead and push the buttons, and that'll turn the sound off. And you'll see a repeating pattern in these experiments with psychologists is half the time the buttons they're not actually going to turn the sound off. And this is what happened. Group 1, they were pushing all sorts of buttons and they couldn't turn the sound off. Compare that to group 2, they eventually figured it out and they turned the noise off. And so they repeated a very similar experiment, and they put them in a new room, so kind of a new situation. And then they stayed in the same groups, and this one used like a shuttle box. So really they just kind of put their hand in a box and they had to move it, and that would turn the noise off. But group 1, I don't know if the noise was exactly the same, but they had learned from the first experiment that nothing they did actually worked. They didn't even bother moving their hand. Group 2, the ones who had success with some sort of button combination, they quickly figured it out. And so even a simple example like this is that they had learned to be helpless, and then that mindset continued forward. And so this kind of brings up something, it kind of refers back to that good mentality and what you were talking about. So let's envision ourselves. We walk into a bank, we're going to deposit like a commission check or something like that, something we're super excited for, and then I don't know why I want to call this guy Johnny, but Johnny walks in there and he has different plans. And so things go down, he fires one shot, and that shot is, think about that shot is you. And it's just a minor wound. It's not that big of a deal. But now think to yourself, you experience this, you're going home and you're going to explain this to like your best friend. How do you explain this to him? Now, you don't have to answer out loud. But Destiny, you look like you're going to say something. You live? Okay. Who goes somewhere else?
You're gonna say what bad luck it was you fired one shot and freaking hit me.
Yeah. And those are the 2 paths. And Shawn actually mentions in the book that one guy's like, of all 50 people who were in this group, there had to be one person that deserved getting shot more than I did. And so when you break the stats down, 70% of the people view it as an unfortunate event. 30% choose that I'm so grateful, this could have been so much worse, or I'm glad it was me rather than this little kid. So, and that kind of goes into, and this is called explanatory styles. So the question is, how do we change from being part of the 70% to the 30%? And you can do that by going back to learning our ABCs. And the A stands for adversity. This is like the shot. We got hit. There's nothing we can change about that. But where we can make a difference is the belief, which is our reaction to the event. And we can think about why it happened to us and what it kind of means for the future. You may not necessarily be able to be a shoulder model anymore, but if you have another one, you could maybe switch sides or something. And then you go down to C and view it as far as the consequences go. If you can view the consequences of this, you're like, oh, I'm going to recover from this. This is going to be like no issue. This is going to be 4 weeks. This is from what the doctor told me that I'm going to bounce right back. Compared to my arm is like, this is so terrible. And you just get like really down on yourself and expand those potential consequences to like long-term or permanent. You start to develop a negative explanatory style. And the way you can kind of switch between these is through the disputation stage. And that our belief is just that, it's a belief, something that, a story that we are telling ourselves. It's not a fact. And then you can actually challenge it or dispute it. And he talks about how this works best if you kind of you can go through the exercise with yourself, but as if you're talking to somebody else. Because oftentimes I found when I'm going through a similar situation that a friend's going to, the advice I give myself is like, it's kind of negative self-talk, to be honest. Compared to a friend that's going through it, you like boost them up and give them positive support. So applying those same principles that we apply to those around us, that we can do to ourselves, can completely change our explanatory style. And then if the cookies burn, good. Yeah.
Can I add something else?
Yeah.
So actually on my way to take my real estate exam, I thought I had to take it in South Carolina for my South Carolina license. I didn't, I could take it in Vegas. But I was flying to South Carolina and I was pregnant and I got, it was like 3 a.m. I missed flights, things got delayed. And I was waiting for a shuttle to take me to the hotel. And the shuttle pulled up and I was so tired, I just climbed the shuttle. And it was in New York and it started heading towards New York City. And I was so scared. All I had with me was my laptop and my phone and my wallet. So great target. I was pregnant, so I felt so vulnerable. And I wasn't in the right shuttle. It wasn't going to the hotel. I was terrified. I thought I was gonna die. And it was pretty traumatic. And I talked to my therapist about it afterwards and told her that I was so scared. I had this trauma from, I've never felt that level of fear in my life. And she told me that the reality is I was never in any danger. And I couldn't wrap my head around that because I felt so scared, but there was never danger. I was never gonna die. that driver was never gonna hurt me. Everything was gonna be okay. I was never in danger, but I had this belief that I was in danger. And I just couldn't wrap my head around it. I was never in any danger. And it just still is hard for me to think about, like, I wasn't ever in danger. I just believed so strongly that I was, that my whole body reacted like I was in danger. Yeah. And so that belief of whether it's a good thing or a bad thing is so powerful because I traumatized myself from believing so strongly that I was in trouble. Yeah.
Oh, I like that story. I think that conveys the power of thought and what that results in as far as our feelings and then the energy we put out. So thanks for sharing that.
I'm still scared if you can't tell.
And so with this, as we kind of go back to the lever and the fulcrum as far as the power of possibilities, and if our minds are open, there's always a third path. It's just our job to find it. And kind of like what you were saying, our fear of the consequences are often worse than the consequences themselves. So this is I thought I'd throw one real estate related thing in there. This is a reflection of the home prices from 2012 to 2022. And if you sit far away enough, it looks like just a straight line going up. But if you're as close as I am, you see that it's lots of up and downs, constantly moving up. But and this is where it's really capitalizing on the setbacks and realizing that if I can just change my explanatory style and turn these adversities type situations and look at them in a different light, they can be motivational. You can get success from them, and then you're not actually falling down. It's falling up. And then principle number 5 is the Zorro circle. Has anyone seen the Zorro movie? Okay. So we'll talk a little bit about this and how this works. So the story with Zorro is that, we see him as this big swashbuckler swinging from the chandeliers and doing all these fun sorts of things for people who are less fortunate or whatever. But early on, he kind of had an ego and he wanted to be doing all these things, but I think that guy's name was Don Diego. But he came to him and he put him in that circle. He's like, you're gonna be in the circle. He's like, no, I want to be swinging from the chandeliers. I want to be doing all the cool stuff. He's like, no, your focus is going to be inside the circle. And once you master the circle, then we'll expand the circle. And that's one of the biggest drivers of success is our belief that our behaviors actually matter and that we have control over our future. Does anyone watch the news? No, okay. If you did, at any point, do you have a sense or a feeling of control over your future? It's absolutely not. And so that can result in like stresses building up, workload building up. And as these things start to mount faster and faster, and it gets to a certain point that they're moving faster than we can actually control, and then we start to take on too much, this is when it really becomes a problem, and we can lose the belief. And so to get that belief back, we just really need to concentrate our efforts on smaller, manageable goals to regain that. And so one example is, so Shawn was a proctor at Harvard, I think for 12 years or something like that. So the fire department actually went into this student's room, and he had pizza boxes just absolutely scattered anywhere. You probably wouldn't even know that there was a desk in there. It was so bad. The fire department said, you have got to clean this up, not for the safety of the other students, but if this place starts on fire, you're not going to get out yourself. And so I'd imagine that you wouldn't want pizza boxes absolutely everywhere in just a filthy dorm room. And so what Shawn had him work on is he circled a part of the desk, just a 1 foot diameter area on there. He said, I want you to clean this area. And so he cleaned it, and he said, your goal for the next 24 hours is to absolutely defend this area. Do not allow any more pizza boxes in here, no litter, no schoolwork, nothing, and defend that. And so he successfully did that. And so when he mastered that circle, Shawn expanded the circle. So now there's additional things to clean up. And shortly thereafter, he actually started to build momentum, and his room was pretty clean, and he didn't have to deal with the firefighters anymore. And what's interesting is there's this theory, it's called the broken window theory. And anytime there's like an abandoned building, and someone would go through and like throw a rock or a brick through the building and it broke a window, the eventual cascading effects of that would there be major crime in the area over time. And they were thinking about themselves because in the 80s and 90s in New York, they're just having tons of crime in general. So they were thinking about the broken window theory, and they thought, well, I wonder if this will actually work in reverse. And so what they focused on, instead of like focusing on immediately crime and all those other things, they focused on cleaning one subway car. They cleaned all the graffiti off and just absolutely protected that car, kept the graffiti off, and then they slowly expanded their circle to the other cars and then to the platform. And then they just kept expanding out. And what eventually happened is they saw crime lower significantly in that area, which is pretty cool. So one way that we can gain control is we need some self-awareness, which can often be difficult to do. But as you start to feel that you're out of control, if you recognize that, it's good to just identify how you feel. You can either say it out loud or write it down, but putting it into words is super helpful and can actually lessen the perceived effect of that. And then when you're to that point, you can actually identify aspects of that I do have control over, as far as like either the oven temperature or the time, or I'll just stick to the same oven over and over again. And he recommends setting one small goal to accomplish it quickly. That's going to kind of set off some momentum for you. And then we have principle number 6, which is the 20-second rule. So who here has ever tried to change habits, whether it be a bad habit or just like get a new habit? Don't you wish there was just like a book on that or something? But Shawn actually was trying to do this himself. And even though it may be common that we should get rid of this maybe good habit and substitute a great habit for a good one, common sense does not always lead to common action. And there's plenty of YouTube videos to prove that point. And he mentions a different author in the book. He says, we're just basically big bundles of habits. Like, did anyone have to put a ton of thought into brushing their teeth this morning? Or I'm wondering how I got dressed. It's just automatic. I know I did, but that's about it. But it's kind of like driving too. Like when we drive here and then go home, we know exactly what route we're going to take. And there's really not it's kind of like when you don't necessarily black out, but you're like, oh my gosh, goodness, like 30 minutes passed by, and all of a sudden I'm 30 miles down the road. You just have like no clue. Yep, we're autopilot. That has become a habit, and we've done it repetitively, and it's just kind of, that's how our brain works. And so this is, the response to frequent practice can result in these new neural pathways being formed. This kind of goes back to, you can't teach a old dog new tricks, but so that concept flies in the face of this neuroplasticity, that we can actually learn new things that regardless what age. It may require some additional work and stuff, but similar to how jugglers start juggling, if anyone's ever started doing that. Now, do you do juggling? No, you get a wizard hat. It's so cool.
You should.
Yeah.
I mean, I perform magic.
Yeah. But it's probably like performing magic. Like if you practice juggling right off, you know, your hands are going to be slow. You're not going to be quite sure. But if you go to like a show in Vegas, these people are like throwing chainsaws up and around, and they're just like having a conversation because they've done this over and over again. And those neural pathways are being re-emphasized, and it's getting so much easier for traffic to go down those. So in Shawn's example, he really wanted to learn how to play the guitar. So he set up on the wall a calendar that had 21 boxes on it, and he was super confident at the end of 21 days, he'd have 21 boxes checked off. And so what he did is that, and he's studying positive psychology, knows all this stuff. But the thing is, he's storing his guitar in the closet 20 seconds away. He's, I don't know where he's living. He said his apartment's not that big. And so what he notices at the end of 21 days, he only has 4 check marks checked off. And so he says that now he's a depressed positive psychologist. But he kind of wanted to know why. And really what it had to do is with activation energy. Has anyone seen one of these before? This is my chemistry nerd side coming out. Anyway, but what happened with the guitar in the closet, this is kind of baseline, and this is the eventual habit he wants to build, is like he wants to learn how to play the guitar. This is where his current energy is. With it clear across the room, he had to expend this much energy, which is the activation energy, to learn how to play the guitar. And regardless, this is the path that is not used the most. He was just used to coming home and maybe turning on Netflix or something, which was the path of least resistance, especially if you have the remote right next to the couch. And so as he would stick in that habit of sitting down, the guitar's so far away, it's not in the closet, it's not visible, he realized he needed to actually do something to increase or decrease the energy to actually learn how to play the guitar. So we bought like a $4 guitar stand, put it right next to the couch, and started his 21 days over. 21 days later, he had 21 check boxes. And so just by making it easier for us to do these habits, and you can also make it harder to do the habit you're trying to replace. So if you have a remote control here, every time you're done, you can actually, take the batteries out and put them clear in your bedroom, underneath the bed, in a safe that you have to put a lock on that's inside another box, that's inside of an Amazon box. And it's just not worth it. It's just so much easier to play the guitar. So we can actually not necessarily trick ourselves, but make it so much easier to create a habit.
That's why meal prepping is awesome. It's a lot easier to just go to the Chick-fil-A drive-thru.
And then principle number 7, which is social investment. This talks about why our social support is our single greatest asset. And so Shawn talks about he was a volunteer firefighter. And so they're going to put him in a burning house. And I think it's called like the maze or something. But anyway, it's just kind of this big room. There's like full-blown walls and everything. There's a maze. They tell him, he and his buddy that are going through, that there's going to be a dummy inside. The goal is to rescue the dummy. They're going to have 60 minutes to complete this task, and that they have 60 minutes worth of oxygen, and that there's going to be a 10-minute buzzer that goes off to let them know they only have 10 minutes of air left, but you should be able to complete this in 10 minutes. Apparently firefighters are like psychologists, because a lot of these things were not true. But it illustrates a good point. So when they put their masks on, these were completely painted over. So there was absolutely no visibility, which kind of mimics what it looks like inside of a fire. But they said the most important thing that gives you the highest chance of survival in finding the dummy is to stay in absolute contact with your partner. And so one of them would keep their hand on the wall, and the other one would keep their hand on the partner and then use their other hand to scan for the dummy. And so they get in there, and all of a sudden, you know, they turn the flames on, and it's like overwhelming, and they haven't found the dummy, and they're like 10 minutes in, and all of a sudden they hear the alarm go off, and they're like, what the heck is going on? And so they kind of start to panic. They're like, it couldn't have been like 45 minutes or something. We got to have plenty of air. And so as they start to panic and do all this stuff, his buddy lets go of the wall, and then he lets go of his buddy. And so now they feel like they're running out of oxygen. They can't find anything. They can't find the dummy. I already said that, can't find anything really. And so what they do is they kind of shut it down. One, there was never any dummy to begin with. The book says the only dummies in there were the volunteer firefighters. And so, and the thing is, there was really only 10 minutes worth of oxygen with their tank. So that's when it was set to go off. So they could really put them underneath significant amount of pressure. And so what they found is when they turned all that off, Shawn was kind of pulled out. And he told them, it's like, yeah, you guys were like 20 feet apart, basically spinning in circles, like absolutely getting nothing done, which I guess is pretty common. And so they had let go of their greatest resource. And so the mistake that happens a lot of time when we get in crisis mode, and that crisis could really be anything, is that the first thing that we let go is like time with our family and friends. And that results in decreased productivity. But who thinks they're actually more productive when they're like, oh, I don't have to, I don't know what I was gonna say. I don't have to like do anything with the kids, I don't have to bathe them, or don't have to focus on this or that. I'm gonna be super focused on this. Your productivity actually declines.
I agree with that. When Cole was little, I would get more done working all day and taking care of him rather than the days I would be home without having to work. I would just get more done knowing I had to get things done, be with him.
It's true unless you're running errands, and then it actually is easier to do it without kids. You can
Right.
So, and the result of this is interesting, because you're under a big time pressure and you decide, like, I'm just going to focus on this solely. Two things are going to happen. Either you're going to fail to complete it, which is, it kind of sucks. And then also you kind of lost your investment, or you haven't been investing with family and friends. Or the other thing is you get it done and you're so awesome, you get rewarded with another project, but you're out of oxygen. So either way, it's kind of not that beneficial. And interestingly enough, this can actually affect our health. So those people who don't have good social connections, you can actually add 30 points to your blood pressure. And then they followed up with some people who experienced heart attacks in the 6 months afterwards, which is kind of the most critical time. And so they found that those people who had good social support systems were 3 times more likely to survive. And then a pretty interesting Harvard Men's study, they followed 268 college students from the entrance into college, which was in the late 1930s, for like 70 years. And the guy who's been running the study for the last 40 years, keep in mind this book was written, I think, in 2010, they asked him if he could just kind of summarize it. And it really came down to one word. And he said that word was love. And so he found that the social bonds were predictive of overall happiness and eventual career achievement, occupational success, and income. So very, very interesting, especially when we think like, I don't have time to do this. I don't have time to do this, and that's super applicable to like college students who think like, I can't spend 5 minutes chatting about whatever college kids chat about. But that's super beneficial. Those people will experience less stress and they actually thrive. So, yeah.
Yeah, I've noticed when I'm in crisis mode, like I've got a loan blowing up and I'm trying to do all these things, and then I have to wait for other people to do their stuff. there's so much mental energy tied to the crisis I'm in, and I can't actually do anything about it for periods of time, but I don't find that I think I have the time to talk to anyone or friends or, family. It's just like, no, I don't have time for that. When really I do, and it would probably help me feel a lot better, but my mental energy is just so like, and then I just sit there and I end up doing nothing but worry.
Yeah.
And then it's like, what good is that?
Yeah. You're busy waiting.
Exactly.
It's interesting. I like that. And it talks about, this is just kind of reemphasis of things we've talked about, but those people who invest in their social support, they're just better equipped in general, even under the most difficult circumstances. And those people who also invest, they're also going to kind of be able to see that third path or the fourth potential path. And then what's really interesting is that from this paragraph, it's actually more important to support people in the good times than the bad. And that if you share upbeat news with someone, it's called capitalization, and it actually helps to multiply the benefits of the positive event. Now there's different ways to respond. There's 4 different ways to respond, and ignoring is the worst, we'll say that. The best is actually, are the winning responses, which are both active and constructive. So it offers like enthusiastic support, like, hey, congratulations on closing your loan. I don't know if you get raises or whatever. We'll just kind of say, it's awesome that you got a promotion and a raise. When does that go into effect? I'm curious and actually asking questions more about him. So specific comments and follow-up questions. This is the best response that allows you to kind of invest the most into those people. So this is the last part of the book, which talks about the ripple effect, because so far we've mentioned a little bit the times where the happiness advantage is beneficial in workplaces and family and everything. But a lot of these principles are ones that we need to apply ourselves. But once we are able to apply these to ourselves and start to experience that, that's when we can really spread that to those either family members or people we work with. And much like water, like the first raindrop falling into a lake, it ripples throughout. They've estimated that each of us has a direct impact through like the happiness advantage on 1,000 people. And that's because within 3 degrees of us, it's estimated that most people have come into contact with 1,000 people. And we'll kind of show, I clearly have no idea what I'm doing. Oh, I have to look at that.
Pinar to Aplon and the beast and to O'Weara. Borta studies Graham.
Oh, that's courageous. That's courageous. And the fullback from Namibia, he's heard a bit. That was the full force of the beast. This is the big fella.
I don't even know if he sees the guy in blue.
That is just some tank coming down. Oh dear. Courageous stuff to stop him. A few bruises on that body in the showers after this game.
He's okay. Who felt that? Anybody play football and felt that?
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting? We weren't even there. Nothing physically happened to us.
It's like when you see on TV surgery that start to cut into cells.
I need help on that.
Cringies.
Yeah, and so they've learned that these are called mirror neurons. And so each of us probably felt the impact, maybe not necessarily on that, but at other times they kind of give the example in the presentation of a rugby hit at a bar. Just imagine that multiplied from like the first person who like groans and like kind of punches over in the fetal position because that smackdown that dude got, and it just spreads throughout. None of these people were there. I mean, they're like, they could be thousands of miles away. And they found that a lot of the motor neurons are close to the mirror neurons. So as we experience this, we kind of experience, I saw your face, Grimace, when you're watching that. So there's movement in association to these feelings.
I never thought of that before. Is that why men love to watch football? Because they get to experience that? Because like for me, I don't like to see people get hurt. but guys still love it.
Lots
I never thought of it that
Yeah.
way, but
I
like,
guess if we picture ourselves as the guy running and
Yeah.
breathing,
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah.
We get to pick our players.
Yeah. Maybe we just have different explanatory styles and you experiences, you're the one getting run over and we're like, oh, we're so glad it's not us or something. I don't know. That's a good point. But a lot of these positive emotional contagions can actually start subconsciously when we're mimicking the body language of somebody else. I did this last night. I was over at a friend's house and he has this banister. So I started leaning on the banister. Then what did he do? He started leaning on a banister, right? Try that next time you're in a conversation with somebody, like, oh, I'm gonna see if this guy's motor neurons are firing. You just kind of stand there like, fold your arms and they'll kind of do that.
There's this thing about moms, how we kind of
Yeah,
sway
yeah.
when we're standing, because we usually we're just having a baby, and other moms will mimic it when they see you just
Yeah.
they're swaying, they'll start swaying.
still do that.
Yeah.
And so if you start with like these motor neurons, like someone smiling or something like that, that will actually pass along to the other person and it'll take upon the emotions you're feeling. So if someone comes in with a big smile on their face, or you can kind of feel the energy if someone like walks in the room and it's just like, ugh, I kind of want to be somewhere else. Everyone's experienced that, kind of do these sort of things. So in summary, these are the 7 principles that we've gone over from the happiness advantage. All of them are super useful and you can see that a lot of them tie into each other and multiple can be used at the same time. But it's similar to the butterfly effect as far as the social investment goes. There's images and stories of like, a butterfly flapped its wings in, I don't know, Toronto, and then you get a bunch of tornadoes in Kansas or something like that. But so that effect can happen, then we can spread that either through like negativity, but also we can take advantage of the happiness advantage and spread that. This is the link to, I don't know how to do QR codes, but that's the link to the strength find. It's not strength finder, but those strength things that I mentioned earlier. This will identify your top 5. The survey is free.
Signature strength.
Yeah, signature strength. Yep, correct. And then you can kind of go back and look in your life to see when you recognize when you exercise some of those or practice them, and then just see how you felt during those things. I'm going to take 2 more minutes. If you're ever in a conversation with me and you got to go somewhere, I'm like, okay, this is the last thing. But I do that like 5 times. Yeah. So I did a little experiment. So I cooked a bunch of rice, and each of these bowls has half a cup of rice in it. And for this rice, these were all exposed to the same conditions. I said these words to it. If this bowl of rice, and these were in the same refrigerator, they were just separated. This little bowl of rice, I would think these things. And then same thing over here. I'd say those things and think those. So this started on April 23rd. And this is what they look like this morning. They're in the same category. So you can't really see anything. There is a little bit of mold right there. I got like a better picture of it, but it's kind of fuzzy and fuzzy and pink. I was hoping for some green stuff and pop up better, but what's interesting is when you look on the bottom. So these are from the negative side. And so there's numerous little things. And so these were exposed to the same conditions. I probably missed like 2 days from the 23rd, but this was just simply me thinking back to the Pygmalion effect and how those researchers came in and tested those students. I was just thinking thoughts of these things, and I repeated those things twice. And honestly, I wasn't getting any mold till like a week ago. So I started opening it up to hopefully just accelerate the process, or you white guys wouldn't be seeing this today. But then apply this. If you can do this to rice, and other people have done this with plants and stuff, what are the consequences of your self-talk? What does your self-talk look like? And you're like, oh, I did some awesome self-talk 2 minutes ago. Then you're like, oh, I forgot the last 7 days. What are It just like constant, so consistency is the key. And if you can change some mediocre rice, imagine what you can do with your life, so.
Is there a video of you saying stuff to the rice? That'd be great.
So I did start with the positive because I thought if I started with the negative, I'd probably carry that over to the. So yeah, it was interesting, but no, it's a good idea though. And one thing that's been super impactful for Shayna and I is a Pivot Point event that we attended, and so we're actually helping host one. We're going to be the MCs for it. Up in Clearfield on June 5th and 6th, if you want information, feel free to ask us while we're here. There's a little QR code about that. So I'll leave that there if you want to scan it, but I have one more slide, but that's kind of the actual end. So other than that, any questions or comments?
Anybody have any questions, comments, thoughts?
So I go ahead.
Yeah, I've got a comment, like, I just kind of thought, I'm just gonna listen, you know, to the whole thing. But right off the bat, remember when you talk about positive, negative, you know, how many people say, oh, hey, I was lucky, 30%, 70%, right? So I saw something yesterday and I thought, I can't help but think about this. And it was football play. And it was way back when Drew Brees were playing for the Saints. And it was at the end of the half or the end of the game that there was only a matter of seconds left. He goes back, scrambles around, throws a frantic pass, right? And the guy tries to go down and get the ball, and it's intercepted by the defense. Like half in, the game's over, right? So the defensive guy gets back up, starts running the opposite way, like, hey, I'm gonna score. The offensive receiver, the game's over. The offensive receiver goes up, grabs the ball, rips it out of his hands, and runs it for a touchdown. And you go, what? And every once in a while you see plays like that.
Yeah.
But you start thinking in your mind, if you could kind of see what the thoughts of everybody on that offense was, when the ball was thrown, interception, failure. You know? But what was that receiver thinking? I guarantee you, he was thinking, I'm gonna figure out a way to win right now. I'm gonna go and get that ball. But like he felt so, 100% chance, he said, I'm getting it. Because he got it.
Yeah.
But in the minds of that defense, they were like, we just dodged a bullet. We won. And then when you think about it, once that was stripped, we're losers. You know? And then everybody on up, we're winners. It's like, but it's interesting that are you reactive or are you making things happen? But without that receiver, nothing happened. It was a boring play. Game over.
Good. I like that. That's awesome.
Love it.
So that's all I have. If you want to connect, there's my information, and then I'll go to the next one. Yeah.
That was awesome, James. Appreciate that.
Want me to say something?
Huh?
Want me to say something?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Meg, do you want to come up here? Okay. So I haven't worked directly with Meg before, but I have worked with Set the Stage. We did a pre-listing consultation. And I was blown away with how much I actually learned. And you guys gave them a little handout that says, this is what you should do before open houses, which is really nice. And then the pictures you took, and then the details that actually provided to help a home seller know from kind of a third party and not from us about what they see as far as selling fast in the home, as far as what's going to appeal to the most number of people, just super beneficial. So if you've never done that, it's 100% worth it. So that's my little spiel. So you guys can.
Awesome. Come right up.
Hookup we can use for video.
What's that?
Give a little hookup we could use for video, is that cool?
Yeah, put me on the spot.
Sorry, I have to get down here and everything. All right, we'll dive right in. So we are, Set the Stage, we are a home staging and furnishing company based here in the Valley. We're actually franchised across the United States now. We have about 23 franchise locations across the US. So it's a very proven business model that we can provide all sorts of staging and furnishing needs for investors, model homes, real estate agents, basically anybody who needs furnishing and staging solutions. Obviously our main thing is staging vacant homes. We also do what's called pre-listing consultations, which is what James just mentioned, where we go into a home that maybe is owner occupied, they're just trying to sell their home, they're still living there. And we go through room by room and give them pointers of things they can do to make their home appear more like a vacant listing, right? So we're kind of trying to stage their home and help them use the furniture and items they have to make their home appear as beautiful and polished as possible, so that the listing photos look better. Potential buyers are more interested in the home, can see themselves better in the space. And then after that consultation, it starts at $175 for a basic home, and then we send them a checklist room by room that goes, here are all the things we discussed. You don't have to write anything down. We tell them everything they need to do to make their home, yes, polished and beautiful. So that's that thing. Thank you so much.
Hasn't worked yet, so.
Well, we'll hope for the best.
It's USB.
Oh,
Backside right here. In the backside.
right here. Thank you. Perfect.
No.
Probably HDMI too. Okay, perfect.
86% of potential buyers find it easier to visualize the property as their own when it's professionally staged.
Oh, I bought my blending
Staging sells for 25% more. 73% of professionally staged homes spend less time on the market than a vacant home. Investing in professional home staging is oftentimes much less than taking a price reduction. Set the Stage is the premier professional home stagers in the real estate industry. We maintain high standards by utilizing professional movers, talented stagers, and always keeping our inventory fresh and trendy. A pre-listing consultation is a great service that helps sellers prepare their house for marketing to potential buyers. We help them shift their mindset and break down the daunting tasks of what to do and where to begin step by step. When it comes to short-term rentals, investors love our affordable wholesale buying power and talented design team. We offer multiple solutions, from supplying only the furnishings to complete turnkey packages and creative professional solutions to existing properties that will yield a greater ROI. Whether it's a model or creative by need, builders love our ability to get a project staged quickly and our affordable model home staging packages. We're not a one-size-fits-all. We have options from renting to buying furnishings that cater to the builder's needs. Set the Stage is the solution and marketing tool for all your staging and furnishing needs.
Great. These are just some of the services that we offer at Set the Stage. Like I mentioned, vacant staging, pre-listing consultations, short-term rental furnishings. So like if you have an investment property and you need some furniture for your rental, model home and crane staging, and then we get really deep discounts to our wholesale providers. So we can always provide new furniture. All of the furniture we have in staging we sell as well. So if you ever see something in a home that we stage, you say, hey, love that. We can always get you that couch or whatever it is. So now I'm going to pass it over to our lovely staging director, Talana, to tell you a little bit about how it works from like the process when you call us to getting something staged.
Yeah, so, hi everyone, nice to meet you. I've
Come
seen
stand up
some
here
of
so
you,
I
and
can
there's
see you.
some of your faces you look really familiar.
She's the safety director at our Sally County location.
Nice to meet everyone. Yeah, so typically we run our contracts for about 8 weeks. The vacant homes, those packages start at 2,400. You know, it can vary depending on where they are located. The amount of furniture that's going in each room, but typically the safe spot is 2,400 to start. And the 6 main areas that we cover are the kitchen, dining, living, primary bed and bath, main bath, and then a powder bath.
We can always add additional rooms on if you have additional needs, like a family room in your basement or like an office space that you want to stage, you can just add those things on a la carte.
Yep.
Okay, and it takes about 2 days for us to consult to install as long as we have things installed.
So, and then if you guys need to extend beyond like the 8-week contract, you can do a month-to-month rate. One cool thing about Set the Stage is that we only require a 25% deposit down, and we can collect the rest from escrow when we do stage.
A little bit less painful out of you when you find a spot get up front.
Yeah.
So, like, for example, if you have an existing house and they want to stage it, but where are you gonna put all our old stuff?
We can work around that. It's called an enhanced stage.
Yeah.
We do those. They're not very common.
Yeah.
They're a little trickier, but we do them. And we'll just work with what they have. You know,
If you guys have like the staging, so you gotta get rid of the.
Yeah, oftentimes when we're staging vacant homes, people have already moved their things out. It's obviously easier to.
That's our job. Get rid of your shit. Nobody wants it. Pack it up.
Which we can also do that at a PLC too. If you came into a listing consultation, we kind of help them decide like what can work for staging.
Yeah.
What we would recommend.
Those pre-listing consultations are really, really helpful. Like James said, you are the experts and it's not us telling them
Yes.
that we don't.
We're the bad guy, we can tell them.
That's not the bad guy, it's the same good problem, right?
Any other questions about staging or process? All right, well, we're gonna pass on a
Thanks,
couple of
guys.
things to you, and we have all card ready for you guys to eat.
Awesome. Thanks, Jay. Good stuff. Nate, you're the sole survivor. See you, buddy.
You say that again, you're echoing really bad.
I said goodbye.
Oh, hey, have a good one.
All right, well,